Bonjour tout le monde. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Diane Bérard. I'm the social finance reporter for Future of Good. And this afternoon, I have the pleasure to have a conversation with Vincent Stanley, who's got a really cool title. Vincent is Patagonia longtime chief storyteller. Hi, Vincent.
Hello, hi. Let's see, we have kind of a difficult connection, but
we do.
You know what I'm going to do? I had this happen yesterday, and I'm going to switch to. Well, first of all, hello.
Hello.
But, I'm going to switch to hotspot.
Okay.
To support the call because I'm having trouble with the internet for some reason. So I will probably lose you and come right back in.
I'm waiting for you. So while Vincent, in a way, is coming back, I'll just give you some more information about him. So Vincent is the co-author with Evan Chouinard, who's the founder of Patagonia, of the book, The Future of Responsible Company, and has been with Patagonia on and off since 1973. Vincent helped develop the Footprint Chronicles, the company interactive website that outlines the social and environmental impact of the products. He also is instrumental to the Common Thread Partnership and Patagonia's book. He's currently serving as, aside from the longtime chief storyteller, as the director of philosophy and is a resident fellow of Yale Center for Business and Environment. And not only that, but Vincent is also a poet whose work has appeared in Best American Poetry, and he and his wife, the writer Nora Gallagher, live in Santa Barbara and on the coast of Maine. This afternoon with Vincent, we're going to discuss about responsible companies. How much activism can a company have? What is the acceptable minimum and maximum level? So we have a lot of subject, and not only that, but Vincent is going to talk to us about Anthropocene. So we know about Anthropocene, which is the impact men and women, the humanity have on their environment. But what is Anthropocene? It's the age of cheap crap. So there's this documentary that Patagonia contributed to, that developed, which is about how we managed to go from getting what we need to survive to getting many more things that we don't need, but we feel we need to survive. So I took the time while you were away, Vincent, to present you. So now we can go dig into the conversation. And I would love to start with the documentary that I've been watching. So there's this great title, Anthropocene, Welcome to the Age of Cheap Crap. So how would you sum up the message of the documentary and the impact intended with the documentary?
Yeah, I think it goes back about 15 years, and we started to have conversations with William McDonough, who came up with the whole concept of cradle to cradle. Mm-hmm. And we decided, okay, we want to do this. So we committed in 2005, almost 20 years ago, to be able to take back every product that was ever made at the end of its useful life. So we committed to that. And then as we were successful in 2011, we started to take everything back. But we realized that recycling is only the end of the story, that there's a reason in for the 4 R's of reduce, reuse, repair, and recycle. There's a reason that recycle comes last. And so we started to address this and create a platform to sell used clothing, because we make clothes that are designed to last a long time. We doubled our capacity for repair, and then ended up having to double the size of the repair department every time because it was so popular.
Mm-hmm.
And then we decided, well, we have to address this issue of reduce, because the problem that we face now with our economy is that we extract from the earth and we pollute the earth in a way that we don't know how to repay nature what we take from her. And when we pollute, we don't really know how to clean up, because private enterprises pollute, and then it becomes the social responsibility to clean up. So, but that's one of the hardest things for a company to talk about, is reduce, because after all, we're selling things, and we rely for our living on selling things. So the message that we try to create is, let's, as a company, we want to make things that are useful and that last a long time and that are versatile, so you need fewer of them. And as a consumer, we encourage people not to fall into this trap of using shopping as a kind of form of entertainment or a form of emotional satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
That if we can shift that emotional satisfaction from getting something new, putting your credit card across the counter and getting something new for the first time, and shift that to being invested in something that you've worn and repaired and had for a long time and had a lot of experience with.
There's this website in Britain called Buy Me One. And they want us to get emotional with what we buy. So we buy something and we buy it once because it's something we get attached, and we want it to be repaired to keep having it.
That's great. I didn't know about that website.
Mm-hmm.
But I know from experience, I once went on a tour. We have something called Worn Wear, in which we would go to campuses with an old truck and with 300 garments. And we'd get because we'd give the garments away. We get this long line of students, maybe 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
But the deal was that something was wrong with the product. It was the second, and the student had to repair it in order to get it. And we would give it to them. We would teach them how to repair it. And so they taught me how to repair my broken buckle on a pack. And I'm unable to stop using this pack. I mean, looks terrible, but I've kept it for another 6 or 7 years.
But there's something very satisfying in having a treasure that you like being repaired and being able to keep it and use it again. But you have to develop that muscle in your brain, getting satisfaction from reusing and repairing. It's a muscle you have to develop.
I think that's absolutely true. And then when you do develop that muscle, the whole idea of getting something new all the time sort of falls away, because how many things do we buy that are new that we end up not using or not loving? So,
what's the social role of a business? I mean, there's this thing about license to operate, being worthy, being deserving, a community wanting to have this business. It's in the air, but how would you describe the social role of business today?
go back and just mention a little bit of where we are. There's a great quote from Aldo Leopold, who is the first great land conservationist in North America. And he said, a thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community. And what he meant was everything. He meant human beings in nature, human communities, and us in nature. And I think what's happened is over the past 200, 300 years, we've developed an economy. The way we make our living actually disrupts the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community. But we're now at a point with a combination of climate change and species loss and this sort of really strong dichotomy between the rural and the urban economy throughout the world that's generating a lot of backlash against democracy itself. We're at the point, I think, where business has to shift, where we have to say, okay, we now have to figure out how to make a living that doesn't disrupt the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community, but instead restores or regenerates it. So the social role of business, I think, ultimately is to meet that need. It's very difficult. And I think that, so at minimum, I think to earn our social license, we need to clean up businesses. We need to clean up after ourselves. If we pollute, we have to figure out a way not to pollute. If we extract and deplete the natural resources, we have to figure out a way around that. If we want to really earn our social license, I think we need to produce useful products and services and then deliver them in the right way. And not every business can do that. If I'm making candy, it doesn't really serve a function that helps to save the earth, but I can do that in a way that doesn't harm it.
People can be activists. Should companies be activists? And is there something as diminishing return of being an activist where you're a company? Like, is it a right way to be an activist company and a wrong way to be an activist company?
Yeah. Yes. I think there's been pressure especially in the last 4 years, for businesses to take positions on all kinds of issues because businesses are regarded as social actors. And I think the problem with that, if you ask us what is our opinion on immigration into the United States, or what is our opinion on a lot of issues, we have an opinion, we can argue it, but we're about as informed as the average taxi cab driver. But if we talk about environmental issues, we have deep connections with the environmental groups, including social justice environmental groups, built up over 35 years. And we know what we're talking about, and we can talk with other people about the issue to kind of self-correct when we need to know more about an issue. So I think that's important. I think that companies should take positions that relate to their function.
And tell me, can you share an instance where the philosophy, the beliefs of Patagonia as an agent of change were tested? Like you said, okay, yes, we want the world to change, but is it our place to say that? Should we do that? Should we have done that?
Yeah. Well, I think that we get tested in different ways, and mostly we get tested when we discover that we're doing something, especially through the supply chain, because we're not doing it directly, that causes an environmental or social harm. And then we have to figure out a way to change it. And sometimes it's difficult. So I'll give you an example. We were very proud of ourselves recently because in 2015, we decided that we wanted to make sure that we were using no virgin oil in our materials, because half of our line is nylon and polyester, half of our product line. And the problem at that time was that you could only achieve 40% recycled content without sacrificing or compromising performance. And the utility of the products are based on how they perform in difficult conditions. So we we did some good work, and we figured out how to make products at 100% recycled. Great. Time to pat yourself on the back and take a vacation. But no, because it turns out that the mills, so many of the big mills that are created are coal-fired. So we're not out of the woods. So now we're working on a pilot program with a couple of the mills that we deal with to figure out how can we help them find financing, figure out the logistics to convert to solar and wind, and bypass this whole sort of intermediate step of going to natural gas or other fossil fuel. So that's an example.
Yeah, supply chain intervention are very challenging.
Yeah.
For companies.
Yeah.
In 2018, sorry, you were built particularly as an activist company when you went so far as suing the President Trump for his elimination of protected lands in Utah. I've been to Utah, and it's really a beautiful place. So where do you see Patagonia being the most effective in your conservation work?
That's a good question. And again, I think this was an appropriate form of activism for us. Partly, we had spent almost $1 million in grants prior to President Obama establishing Bears Ears, which was as a national monument in southern Utah. It was an area that really needed protection, absolutely beautiful, sacred to a whole number of indigenous tribes. And President Trump, one of his first actions was to rescind that as a national monument. So that's when we sued the government. We're engaged in two different kinds of environmental activities. We give grants to hundreds of organizations that are fairly small. They're no bigger than a corner church, 2 or 3 employees, a lot of volunteers, but they have a really strong connection to their community. They're well respected, and they do amazing work. And very few of these organizations are supported by other companies. And now we're also engaged in very large-scale environmental projects. In 2022, the Schwiner family that owned all of the stock of Patagonia donated it to a Purpose Trust, so that all of the profits that would have gone to shareholders are now devoted to environmental giving, in addition to the 1% that we give to these small organizations. So I think we're inspired, and we've been involved with the work that our former CEO, Chris Tompkins, did in Chile and Argentina, in which they conserved about 2 million acres that they bought from private landowners and then donated to create a national park.
This year, it's election year in many countries of the world.
Yeah, all of a sudden.
Many countries, and we see many projections from moving to liberal to conservative. Can a company be the most respected company among liberal and conservative? Is it possible to be both?
I think it's interesting to me because we have information from the Axios Harris poll in the United States that for many years we were really holding our own among conservatives as well as liberals. And I think that conservatives because in the United States, the environment is a third rail. It's, conservatives they don't want to listen to environmental language because they think it's a Trojan horse for liberal projects. And I think we maintained our respect from people who disagreed with us because of the quality of the products we made. I think that I think that there's more of a that will get more difficult. It's getting more difficult now, and will get more difficult over time, until we start to break up this polarization, which I think will happen naturally. But
you feel it? You feel like it's possible naturally to break up the polarization?
yes, because I'm an old man and I've seen I've seen I've seen our society get polarized and then come away from it. Yeah.
I see. Well, I hope you're right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about contradictions, because life is full of contradiction.
Yeah.
How do you respond to the contradiction of being a successful business? Because Patagonia is a successful business in a capitalist system that many argue is at odds with material consumption, sustainability, and environmental preservation. Even though you had this beautiful campaign saying, don't buy this jacket if you don't need it, still you're selling goods. You're selling quality goods, but still selling goods.
Yeah. You know, this is, I think there are two things to talk about. One is there's attention. So I sometimes go into our stores and I see so many t-shirts, or I see so many colors. And at the same time, you know, people need clothing, and then you want to make the clothing useful, and you want to make it beautiful. So I think we're justified in doing that. I think business is justified and trading is justified. There's a system of capitalism that we've developed that we do need very badly to reform, in which there's so much money available for investment, and the criteria for investment are for such a high return. So investors who are seeking like a 20% return on investment, the kinds of activities that they can invest in tend not to be activities that are great for society or great for the planet. So that's one problem. It certainly makes a difference to make quality goods, to sell fewer things, perhaps to more people. I think that one of there are two things in our business model that are significant. It's always been based on repeat purchases and having very loyal customers, much more so than most companies. And the second, I think this is very interesting to me. Over the past 20 years, we have placed so many constraints on ourselves. So, you know, if I'm a sportswear designer in New York, I can go to the FIT library on 7th Avenue, and I can, for my spring line, I can research thousands of prints. If I'm a Patagonia designer, I can't do that because I've only got maybe 100, 150 prints that I can use where we've vetted the dyes that go into them. And this is true throughout the company. You know, when we had to build a second warehouse, our finance and logistics people go out and they're being shown raw farmland to build a 300,000 square foot, 30,000 square meter warehouse. We can't do that. So we built it on top of a reclaimed coal mine. But those constraints, particularly when they involve products, actually lead to innovations. And those innovations actually become part of the business model. So that's significant.
You said earlier that capitalism needs to be reformed. I agree with you. Where would you start? What reform would you, if you had one reform to do, what would you reform?
Well, I don't think you can do one reform. I think that I think you need a holistic approach. And you know, for companies that make things or offer services, that's, you know, we started off the conversation by talking about sort of the best you can do and the worst you can do. For people in finance, that's a whole area that I've never been involved in, that kind of business. I think there's some really wonderful work being done by John Fullerton, who was an investment banker.
About regenerative capitalism.
Absolutely. So I think that that's very much the direction we need to take.
Well, I suggest to everybody who's listening to read John Fullerton and his ideas of regenerative capitalism. He takes all his ideas from nature and how in nature everything is connected, and that we should realize that it's the same thing in capitalism. Everything we do has an impact, and there's no such thing as externalities.
Yeah.
So yes, that's a great way of introducing this idea of regeneration. Tell me, Vincent,
I'm sorry, just very briefly. I mean, he really argues that all of the human systems that we've set up are basically extensions of natural systems, and we don't realize it. And that what we've done is we sort of stopped with Isaac Newton, and we need to move beyond that and get away from mechanics and really talk about regeneration. And just one really quick point: when we don't use the word sustainability, if we can. And the more I think about it, the more I think that sustainability is only possible when it's regenerative first, because that's what sustainability is.
Yes, and we should introduce this word regenerative more in the conversation, in the storytelling. I think that we did our job today. So I would talk to you like the whole afternoon, but I only have one question left.
Okay.
So tell me, what's the score with Patagonia Provisions? I mean, where does it fit in the model? You come up with this business of food. So where does it fit?
Well, Yvon Chouinard loves to eat.
It's a good chart.
And he loves to cook. And so he had thought for 30 years about creating a food business. And so we created it in a very small way about 12 years ago. But it's been very instructive for us. We've learned so much, because if you're in one industry, you're in the apparel industry, you get blinders and you think the whole world is. And with food, we really have, that's where we've really been educated on regeneration, because of the capacity, if you use innovative regenerative agricultural practices, to actually build topsoil rather than continually deplete it year after year. It's also illustrated for us the great use, the great potential for business. So I don't want to run us over time, but just as a quick story. So we have a friend named Wes Jackson in his 80s whose life work has been to bring the Great Plains back to health, that once had topsoil 3 or 4 meters deep, and now down to this, as it is all over the world. And he's an agronomist. He was telling us he had developed a perennial wheatgrass with roots that go that deep into the ground, that stir up the microbes and the fungi and create topsoil. And we said, "This is fantastic, Wes. Where can we buy some?" He said, "Oh, you can't buy Kernza." And we said, "Why not?" And he says, "I can't get anyone to plant it." We said, "Why not?" And he said, "No farmer is going to plant what they can't sell." So we made a contract with a brewery in Portland, Oregon, to create a lager with Kernza as an ingredient. And then we got the first 100 hectares of Kernza planted in Minnesota.
Great plant.
And now it's a regular crop. It's being grown by big cereal companies. So that's one of the functions of business. That's not something an NGO or a government could have done very well, but we could. Yeah.
Great story from a great storyteller. Well, Vincent, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'm sure that all the participants enjoy it too. So this is where our conversation ends, and I invite everybody to stay for the next session. Thank you very much.
All right. Merci.
Bienvenue.